G'day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 17 of Aussie Talks. And I know it's been a couple of weeks between episodes, but I know today's episode is going to be more than worth the wait. Today, I'm joined by jockey Harry Coffey, who has a total of 722 career wins, including a Group 1 win after starting his career in horse racing all the way back in 2011. He's had a ride in the last two Melbourne Cups, including having a ride on Grand Promenade in the most recent Melbourne Cup. He was a jockey on Country Racehorse of the Year Vianden for the 2017-2018 season, and he is a man with an incredible story of resilience. Harry, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, you've talked me up all right. Made me sound okay then. So, happy to come on and have a chat, and hopefully you got some questions that I can answer truly and make myself sound all right for the show.
Oh, brilliant. I'll kill two birds with one stone there. It sounds great. So straight off the bat, basically, I just want to get your thoughts on how you thought Grand Promenade ran in the recent Melbourne Cup, going back a couple of weeks. Just sort of seemed to maybe run out of puff a little bit towards the end. Just want to get your thoughts on how that ride sort of went.
Yeah, he was probably a bit disappointing. I think he finished officially 14th, and we sort of considered him a top 8 or 10 chance in this year's cup, but when it got wet, the rain came. He doesn't like soft or heavy ground, and when that rain fell on the day, and it was quite heavy rain right before the race, it definitely didn't help his chances, and we sort of lost confidence in where we thought he might finish, and sort of the reality set in that he probably wouldn't appreciate the track conditions as the cup got closer. But it was awesome to be involved. He was still honest. Like he ran 14th. He definitely wasn't out the back, but I reckon if the track was a dry surface, he probably runs a top 10 or top 8 sort of race. And, usually that's a pretty good measuring stick of how you've gone in the cup. A lot of people, if you can't run top 3, top 10 is a massive achievement to run that sort of race in what's considered Australia's most famous race.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think you just said top 3 sort of the benchmark on that. And a horse that you rode only 6 days prior in the Bendigo Cup came home like a champion in High Emotion, finishing third. How did that sort of feel for you, knowing that you just rode it to a great win in the Bendigo Cup a couple of days prior to sort of see it go so well? Was it sort of a feeling of, damn, that would have been great to ride, or is it just feeling good for the horse and the owners?
I was pretty happy for the connections. I was pretty proud of her as well. And a lot of people didn't give her any chance at all in that race because her form lines weren't as traditional as you'd like. Usually Bendigo Cup horses aren't considered major chances in a race like the Melbourne Cup at Group 1 level. But I had a feeling that she would run a super race if the track got wet, and that it did. So she sort of profiled completely opposite to Grand Prom. He needed it dry and she needed it wet, and they both needed a lot of luck. And she had a beautiful run throughout on a soft track. She's a tough mare, and she poked in the third. She probably exceeded not only mine, but everybody's expectations. I thought when the rain comes, she'd be a sneaky chance of running between 5th to 8th. But, she done an almighty job and ran third, and I was really proud of her. Yeah, it would have been nice to run top 3 in a Melbourne Cup, but it wasn't meant to be. I can't change that. And no, I was super proud and just wrapped for the connections because they're great people and they've been really good for me. So I can't shy away from barracking them towards their success as well.
Certainly, yeah. And sort of what was that process like? Because I know High Emotion basically had to win that Bendigo Cup and what was very close race in the end to sort of get itself into the Melbourne Cup. Did you or have that guaranteed ride with Grand Promenade and that sort of stopped you from having a possibility to ride with High Emotion, or was it just something that was set up weeks and weeks in advance and didn't have any control over who you rode in the end?
I was sort of just aligned with the Karen Maher and David Eustace stable. I had sneaky sort of suspicions pre-Bendigo Cup that I'd end up on Grand Promenade because I ride for the owners a lot. And Jai McNeil, who was riding it, got suspended in the week prior to the Bendigo Cup. So when I sort of thought if I win on High Emotion in the Bendigo Cup, I'll be a chance of riding her. And then Jai got suspended in the Sale Cup, and he was going to ride Grand Prom. And then, the option came for me to get on Grand Prom. And I sort of took that opportunity up, and I didn't really want to go back on that, mainly because High Emotion had 50 kilos and Grand Promenade had 53. and I walk around about 54. So I would have had to lose significant amount of weight at really short notice to ride High Emotion. And I sort of considered both horses on a sort of similar sort of chance. So I thought I'd elect not to kill myself in the sauna for 6 days.
Yeah, definitely. And we saw with the winner, Gold Trip, in the end was the heaviest horse in the field. So it was sort of one of those, obviously a wet track, a lot of factors and that sort of stuff, carrying the most weight. So it was sort of a lot of factors for you to weigh up.
Yeah, that's right. He was the class horse in the field, and that's why he got that weight. And he had a beautiful run throughout in like soft conditions. But then the second and third horse, both with really featherweight, sort of penalties, and coming through Geelong and Bendigo Cups, which isn't your traditional sort of Group 1 glory races leading into the Melbourne Cup. But it was pretty awesome that some of our really recognised country cups in Victoria here were a part of the place getters in our most famous race. So it was an interesting cup. A lot were saying that, it wasn't really the strongest one because we didn't have the international force like we usually do, but it was still pretty cool to have a horse like Gold Trip, who's been recognised on the world stage, and then a Bendigo Cup and Geelong Cup winner just behind it. So that's why the weight scale in the Melbourne Cup is so significant, because a horse like High Emotion, even though she didn't get near Gold Trip, she still ran third behind him.
Mm. I think you even said in the post race interview back in the Bendigo Cup that if it was a wet track, High Emotion would be, something to look into for the Melbourne Cup. And yeah, I think you've basically called that in how it came home.
That's right. And I've had a lot to do with High Emotion, and I sort of Karen Moe and Davey just said great, trainers of staying horse. And I thought if she gets in the race and it's a wet track, she's going to give her owners something to cheer about at some stage. And she exceeded a lot of expectations, including myself. So we were super proud of her.
Definitely. So jumping back a little bit in the time machine, I want to go sort of back into your upbringing into horse racing. And you come from a family that lives and breathes country horse racing and that sort of stuff. What was that like growing up in that environment? Was it, obviously I'm assuming it brought a fair bit of benefits as well, but was there also an added sense of pressure when you started to, become a jockey and start having those, consistent starts where you came from, a name that's synonymous with country horse racing?
So my father's a horse trainer here in Swan Hill. I live in Swan Hill still. And my mum is from a farming background at a place called Burrawillick, which is 40 minutes from here. And my dad was originally from a place called Birchip. And they're about 20-minute drive apart, just farming towns. My father's from a horsing family that have had horses around their family their whole lives. And he is one of 10. So he's got 9 siblings and he's the youngest. So I've got a heap of cousins. None of them are jockeys, but all have had horses in their life at some stage. And we've just always grown up having ponies and riding not only your own pony, but your brother's pony or your cousin's pony, or your uncle lends you a pony to go on a ride when you're visiting them. And there's just been horses everywhere. And to the point that me and my brother learnt to ride when we were toddlers, and they used to have a poly pipe holding us into the saddle so that we wouldn't fall off, because it was easier to have the poly pipe holding us in the saddle rather than our dads and uncles having to hold us in while they were riding as well. So my brother actually fell asleep on a horse and the pipe held him in the saddle while we walked along. So that's how young we were when we were on horses. And then, dad's trained horses since I was born. He was a farrier before that. My mother's not really big on the horse caper. She's sort of only into the racing game because she, fell in love with dad, and then I've become really involved. So now she's even more involved. So she probably got stuck with the rough end of the stick there, getting caught in the racing game. But so I started riding track work while going to school just because I rode ponies, and then it sort of led into racehorses. And I stayed little and light while growing up, played football, did everything normally at school. And then at the age of 14, I started to ride track work, got a feel for it, had a gallop, didn't mind it, wasn't petrified. It all sort of, went from there. Dad sort of said that he thought I'd be capable of maybe riding in a race. So we started riding in, practice races, which are called jump outs. got around in them safely. And then we approached Racing Victoria to look at getting me into the apprentice school, and that eventuated, and I had my first race ride when I was 15. So I was pretty young when that happened. And you don't usually start that young, especially now. They usually wait to hold them off. But yeah, it was 11 years ago when I started riding. So I was 15, still in school. I was about in year 9, and yeah, it was pretty cool to be in school, and then on weekends riding in races at a very high and professional standard. So that's how it all sort of come about. No real hope for me being born into a racing family, and haven't looked back. And nor has Dad. We've become a great team, and he trains him and I ride him, and I do a lot of freelancing as well for other trainers. So I've been very lucky. There's been no pressure. Mum and Dad are very laid back sort of people, and if I didn't want to do it, there was no expectations for me to do it. It was just do your best and see how you go. And a bit like High Motion, we sort of expect it went on and done a little bit better than what everybody thought.
Yeah, obviously a very, very good partnership that you've had there. So that's very good. So going back to, being 15 and having your first start, if you can remember, what were the nerves like? Were you a bit calm and collected, or were you sort of going, geez, I'm young here, everyone around me's a little bit older here? And was there a sort of sense of, geez, am I ready for this?
Yeah, I was. No, I like to think myself as a pretty calm and relaxed person, but that day I wasn't. I had my first ride at a place called Menangatang, and they race there once a year. It's an hour north of Swan Hill, so you always get a big crowd from the local community. And I ran second, beating the nose, and it happened all very quickly. That by the time the gates opened, I thought about where I was. We're at the winning post, and never heard such a loud roar for a horse running second, with all the locals and that cheering me on. And as I said, Dad's a family of the youngest of 10. We had all our family there, and also a lot of Mum's family. And yeah, it was a pretty big show. So unfortunately, we didn't win, but yeah, it was a great first day, and it was probably the most nervous I've ever gotten on a racetrack.
Yeah, well, I can imagine that. Finish second and only lose by nose. That's not a bad start.
That is right. It wasn't a bad start, and improved a fair bit from there. And I didn't look very good on him. I was only a little kid and wasn't very strong, and went very wide. And yeah, the horse probably should have won, but we've learned a lot from then. So it's been good, and I've been lucky enough that I had those sort of places: Menangatang, Witchy Proof, Carathul, Moolameen. That's where I really learnt my craft. And those sort of places, nobody's watching. It's not broadcasted on TV, and that was the best thing about being apprentice to Dad. He allowed me to go to them places, and we had the right horses for me to learn what I was doing without the media scrutiny of seeing me and watching me stuff it up. And I had a lot of race rides before I sort of people became aware of where I was at, and I sort of probably had 50 race rides hidden without anyone watching before I was exposed to the media. Because the media and other trainers, because as nice as they can be, sometimes if you make a mistake when you're young, and you should be forgiven, sometimes you get tarnished with the wrong brush early, and you just sort of don't kick on the way you can at a young age. So it was the right thing by Dad to look after me and put me out into the bush and let me learn to ride without anyone watching.
Yeah, well, 100%. You get away from not behind closed doors, if you will, but obviously not with the broadcast. You would dodge, any sort of criticism and, things that may stick with you, especially when you're at a young age.
Yeah, that's right. It's really hard for any rider at any age to handle scrutiny and criticism, and you got to keep trainers happy, owners happy, get riding the horse right, understand your horse, and then also have confidence in yourself. And then put all that aside. Then there's the media talking about your performance and the horse's performance, and what could have went better, what could have went wrong for the horse to perform better. And there's people betting on it. So there's a lot that can be criticised. A lot of scrutiny can come with it. And when you're only young and you're trying to be a professional sports person against the very best, it can be a dangerous world. But yeah, I was lucky enough the whole way through, not only just from the beginning, but even in the years that I started to ride in Melbourne, still when I was immature, that I had the right people around me to help me get through if I did make any stuff up, and people had a bit of a crack at me.
Lovely. Yeah, it's great to have that great support base around you. So next question I've got is obviously you're pretty big in the country racing scene. And obviously you've had a lot of rides at, your premier tracks, Flemington, that sort of stuff. What would you say, besides obviously the crowd and maybe the ability of the horses, what would you say is the biggest difference between those country horse races compared to those, inner city sort of races? Is it sort of the feel of the community a little bit more behind you, or is it something else?
I wouldn't say the community has too much to do on a country cup day. Like if you go to a Swan Hill Cup or a Mildura Cup and a Chuka Cup, there's a real community atmosphere because the crowds there, they're big. But a lot of the days I'm riding, like I'd ride 5 days of the 7 days per week. 4 of them would be at country areas. And you might go to Caston on a Monday and there's only, 50 people there. All local people that you've seen at the last meeting you were there. So there's not a lot of difference. It's just a lot quieter. The country cup days where I'm talking about where there's big crowds, that's awesome. A lot of people having a good time, but you don't really need to overthink it. A lot of them aren't even really watching. They're just drinking and having fun with their friends. But then when you go to the city races, you get the crowd and you get the people that are there having fun and you get the genuine punter. And you're riding better stock. The riders that you're riding against are making decisions quicker. It's almost just like any sport. The higher the level, the better the product, and you have to compete with that to be a part of the product. So the atmosphere, I probably prefer the laid back country atmosphere on a Monday or a Tuesday when not many's there. It's just the local committee or the local people that keep those small clubs going. Country Cup days are great. It's a bit of a pain when you're trying to get out after the last race and you haven't ridden a winner and there's a booze bus pulled up testing people for drink driving and all that sort of stuff. All you want to do is get home. But yeah, riding in the big days on the Spring Carnival is the pinnacle of our sport. And even though I love a great country cup, it's a pretty amazing feeling when you're sitting in the barrier at Flemington and you can hear the helicopter with the aerial vision broadcasting live into everyone's rooms. You get that helicopter sort of comes that little bit lower and there's all the big loud crowd and the chopper hovering and you think, yeah, this is what the big stuff is.
Definitely, that definitely would put a few tingles down the spine having that one, having experienced that one.
Especially when you're on a fast one. When you're on a slow one, it's a little bit more enjoyable, but you sort of get around safely is the outcome. But when you're on a fast one, you know everyone's watching and you've got to ride it good. So it's a good feeling, but yeah, there's more nerves that come with that, and it's pretty awesome when you happen to have a win on those big days as well, and you hear the crowd.
Definitely. So how I was able to actually get in contact with you is my dad was a minority owner in Vianden, the 2017-2018 Country Racehorse of the Year. He won the Nil Cup several times, the Witchy Proof Cup. You were the main jockey for that horse. Sort of speak about your relationship with that horse and obviously winning an amazing award, Country Racehorse of the Year. Sort of describe what that horse, what Vianden meant to you and how good he was.
Yeah, so he definitely wouldn't be one of the best horses that I've been able to ride, but he'd be one of the horses I've had the most fun on. And the fact that my dad trained him, and there's no better feeling than riding winners for your father when you train them. You can ride winners anywhere, but when you work at something together and you see how hard someone like my dad has his whole life working with horses to get something out of it, when you end up riding them and a plan comes off in a race that's a major race for the horse involved. Not every horse's major race is a Group 1 because they actually don't have the ability to be in a Group 1. So when you get a horse, you have to choose the right races for it to get in and aim them at that. And Dad did that with Vianden on so many occasions. He just went to these country cups and the horse performed and butted up every time. And I was fortunate enough to do the steering, and he got into a real zone where it was sort of just turn up and steer in the right way, and he'd get the job done. And it was a pretty cool feeling to be able to do that with a horse that I'd nearly get up and see every morning and ride in track work, and to see the joy that Dad would get with me riding the horse. And then also, you'd have a lot of family and friends in the horse, and they'd be all there, and we'd all go to that, the country scene and and have a great day out. And another thing that was really special about him was the first Witchy Proof Cup that he won was my dad's first Witchy Proof Cup, and he'd been trying to win that race for 25 years. And he is from a town called Birchip, which is half an hour from Witchy Proof. And Birchip don't have a racetrack. So Birchip's hometown racetrack would be like Witchy Proof. So when Vianen won the Witchy Proof Cup, it was a pretty special day because Dad's been trying to do that pretty much his whole training career. And it was pretty awesome that I could be a part of it because he's had a lot of runners that I haven't been able to ride. So when we do get a win, it's extra special.
Would be an absolutely brilliant feeling. So I just want to touch on now, and it's obviously something that is a big part of your life and shows an incredible resilience to overcome it. For those listeners who don't know, Harry has cystic fibrosis, which, according to an article which I read, maybe you can verify this, you have to take 20 to 30 pills just to keep those bodily functions up on a daily basis. If you're comfortable speaking about that, how has that experience of having CF, affected your life, and how has it acted as, having, some strains on potentially being a jockey?
Yeah, so CF's, it's who I am. And when you ask, am I comfortable about it? As a young kid growing up, there was no shying away from that I had CF. And even though it is a condition that can affect your life pretty dramatically, my mother and father never, ever let me have the mentality that was to hold me back. I went to school normally. I played footy normally. And there was no, Harry, you can't do that. It was always, if you think you can do it, go and have a go. And I think that's really led into me as a young adult as well, and also being a jockey. It's, if I want to do something, I go have a go at it. And if I can do it, well, then I keep doing it. And I sort of haven't found anything yet that CF has held me back from. I mightn't be as strong, I mightn't be as fit as some of the other jockeys, but that's the way the world is. We can't all be the same, and we all have little problems. But with my CF, it's just a little bit bigger problem that you have to wake up and handle every day. I was born with cystic fibrosis, so I've had it for 27 years because I'm 27, and you don't know any different. It's not like, you went through your teenage years normal and then you woke up one day and something changed. So in one sense, people may say, oh, I've had it my whole life, and, it's a big negative, but I actually consider that a positive because I don't know any different. It's who I am. I don't know what it was like before CF. So this is who I am. You got to get on with it because, I didn't know what it would be like not to be short of breath or what it would be like not to take tablets. It's the way I've been my whole life. So in a sense, to be born with it, it doesn't work against you in a way. You've just got to get on with it, and that's who you are and that's what you are. And when I started riding at age 15, I did have a little bit of trouble with embracing cystic fibrosis because I wanted to be a good jockey and I wanted to be seen as a good jockey. And a lot of people spoke about me because I had CF, not because I was a rider. And I wanted to be known not for the jockey with CF. I just wanted to be known as the jockey. But as I've become older and matured, I've understood that I can still be known as a good jockey and I can still talk about cystic fibrosis freely as well. And I have to do that to create awareness for CF and let people know out there it's not doom and gloom. You can still get out there and have a crack, follow your dreams. And it doesn't even have to be if you've got CF. It can be anything in life that's going wrong for you in the current time, or any person out there that's born with a condition that they might consider can hold them back, to not think like that and to still have a go, because you never know what might happen. So as I've matured, I've learned that speaking about that helps other people. And I've also come to understand that it would have been an extremely scary time for my mum and dad when I was first born, to find out that their perfect little son that's come out has this disease that they've never heard of, and they're getting told how bad it can be and how it can dramatically affect their life span. And I just think to myself, will there be parents out there currently who are going through that same stage? And if they can read an article about me or watch me win a race and hear that I have cystic fibrosis, well, when they look at their little baby, they have some hope. So that's my mentality now. And when you're young, you sort of don't think about that sort of stuff. But as I said, as I've matured, I've become to understand that you got to get out there and you got to talk about it, and it might help someone else.
Yeah, it's an incredible way of thinking, mate, and it's truly an inspiration. And doing a bit of research before this podcast, I saw, plenty of articles of you sort of speaking about how that, you can show that you, even if you have CF, you can still achieve, these great things, and you can't let it hold you back, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And so yeah, CF is a terrible condition, and I've been really lucky that I've stayed extremely healthy. And there's people out there with CF that haven't had the luck that I have had, and they've been struck down by certain infections that have affected them long term. And there's also been people that are my age that have unfortunately lost their life because of the cruel condition. So I'm not saying that, if you get out there and have a crack, you'll get by. Everyone's dealt with different luck, and I've been so fortunate that I've had so much good luck, and I'm really understanding of that. But I just think it's important to know that you can't get down in the slumps. You have to understand that there is a chance that you might be able to get out and follow your dreams, and if you think like that, you're a lot more chance of doing it. So it's a pretty rough condition. It affects your lungs and it affects your digestive system, and you take a heap of tablets and antibiotics to help your body keep going. But we're in an amazing world that health and medicine and science continues to develop. And in the last 3 years, my medication intake is halved because of genetic modifiers that the doctors and scientists have come up with. So we're in an amazing time in medication, and not only is it helping my riding career, but it's making life a lot easier too. So I'm extremely fortunate, and doctors will speak to you about medication. And when you get explained a new drug that's coming out, my doctor said it's a bit like an iPhone. There'll always be an update that you hook in and make the phone better. So we're in an amazing world that's going to continue to get better. And I'm lucky that I was born in 1995 and not in the 80s or 70s, because they didn't have the medication that we've got today.
No, that's definitely true. The advancements have been huge, and yeah, it is great to hear you got such a positive outlook on something that is terrible. But I suppose, like you said, having a positive outlook on it is definitely the way to go.
That's right, and it's for anyone. It doesn't. You don't have to just be cystic fibrosis. It can be anything. When I was asking my doctor when I was 14 whether I could be a jockey, he said, look, it's probably not the ideal occupation for someone that needs to, have plenty of nutrition in them. Is a jockey who'd be trying to lose weight all the time. But if I sit here now and tell you can't, follow your dreams, well, you're not going to want to get out of bed of a morning. But he said, if you get out of bed of a morning to follow your dreams, you're going to have to be healthy. So it's a fine line, and currently and luckily enough, I'm able to do it at the moment.
Definitely. So I'll get on now to some of the viewer questions that have been sent through. So I think you just touched on it then. So how tough is that dieting, to keep such a low weight? And I think you said even a bit before that you didn't really want to hop in the sauna for 18 hours to get down to high emotions weight. So along with the diet, what other measures do you have to sort of keep weight down to make those cuts that you need to?
So I'm extremely lucky. I'm a natural lightweight, so I walk around about 54 or 55 kilos, where a lot of the other jockeys will walk around 58 or 59. If I need to lose weight suddenly, you just cut sugar and carbs out and do exercising. But I'm pretty lazy. I'm not very good at losing weight, and the longer you leave the dieting, well, then the closer it gets to the race, and the more suddenly you'll have to lose weight, and that's when your saunas and that come in. So if I wake up a little bit heavy, and when I say a little bit heavy, a kilo to a kilo and a half heavier than what my riding weight on the day is, I'll lose a kilo in the sauna or spa. And they have saunas or spas at the metropolitan tracks, not the country tracks. And I'll jump in the sauna for 15 minutes and then sit in the spa for 45, do an hour. Then you get out, check your weight, hope that you've lost the required amount. You might then have a little rest and then jump back in if you need to lose more. So that's sort of how you lose weight. Why I don't have to do that a lot is because of cystic fibrosis. I should be a lot bigger and stronger than what I am. My brother, who's younger than me, is a tall, strong, completely different build to me. But because I had CF growing up and I had a lot of nutrition going towards fighting infections and keeping me healthy and well, it didn't go into my growth and development, the normal nutritions that you get when you're growing up. And that's why I stayed small and light. So if I didn't have cystic fibrosis, I probably wouldn't have been a jockey because I wouldn't have been light enough to do so because, my brother doesn't have CF and, he definitely can't be a jockey. So that's sort of my story with losing weight and that. When I do have to do it, I'm not very good at it, but I'm lucky enough that I've stayed small and light, and that's because of growing up with cystic fibrosis kept me that way.
Yep. Yeah, the positive of it if you look at it that way, because keeping the weight down. So I got a very, very specific question here that one of my mates sent through. So what is that feeling when you storm home from a few lengths back just to pip the leader right at the end?
Yeah, everyone's different. I love getting back and storming late. It's one of my favourite things to do, where some people love leading and getting away and ducking off. I also love sitting midfield and having to thread your way through between runners and looking pretty and then getting right out and getting them on the line. So to answer your mate's question, I love that feeling. I love the thought of people thinking, oh, he's not going to get out. And then you do get out and you have everyone sort of on their edge. Horse trainers hate it. They hate riding like that. They like their horses to be out, plenty of room, and make a good thing of it. But I think there's no better feeling or watch or look than a horse looking like it's going to be unlucky and then a slight gap coming, and you get through and only get there at the last minute, and they're storming and they're really strong late. I love that feeling, and it's sort of almost there's relief, there's adrenaline, there's also excitement as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Another one I got here is, how does your preparation change between the big races to like the Melbourne Cup to, just a normal race, if you will? Is there extra nerves? Is there, something different for breakfast? Is it literally just routine?
You've got to try and keep it routine because you've just got to try and, the reason you're on the horse is because the rider that you are, and the rider that you are is the rider that you were yesterday in the normal race you were riding in. So you've got to try and stay as normal as you can. Talking about breakfast, I'd probably try to have the same sort of setup every day. I wake up, have a coffee, then check your weight because a lot can determine what you have the morning of depending on your weight and what weight the horses have got that you're riding. And then, you go from there. You have a look over the form. You would have done the form probably the day before, and then you review it. You have a look at the scratchings, but you try to keep it pretty simple, even though you're in a big race and you should be more committed and more excited. If you let that happen and overwhelm you, you can make decisions that are uncharacteristic. You got to remember that you're on the horse for the rider you are, and the rider you are is who you were yesterday, and your usual calm, normal self is the reason you're on the horse. So that's sort of the mentality I try to have. It's a pretty cliche sort of answer, but I think that's what most sports people sort of try to have is you got to treat it normally and hope that your natural instincts under pressure are what you would normally be when the pressure's not as high.
Definitely. So I got two more questions here for you. So one here is there's been a bit of, especially this spring carnival, there was a lot of talk in the media and by people online saying there was sort of an oversaturation of gambling and that sort of stuff, advertisements in the spring carnival season. I just like to get your thoughts on that. Does it, in your way, does it take away from, the pleasure of, riding horses and, watching it just because it's so focused on gambling? Or do you think it sort of adds another spectacle to the sport?
There's two sides to it. Yeah, you can go with the theory that we should be, it's purely for the horse and it's the love of the horse, which, we're massive advocates for, and Racing Victoria and racing all over Australia are great with their animal welfare, but that we should be watching racing and enjoying racing purely because of the natural sport that it is. But the sport is becoming so big and so successful because of the money that's coming through it on an industry level, and that is because of the punt. So even though it is thrown in our faces and it's really quite annoying sometimes, it is what's making our industry so strong and so great. So it is a balancing act. We don't want to overdo it. We don't want to be throwing it down our kids' faces, because at the end of the day, when it's their turn to have a bet and they're old enough to, they probably won't enjoy just a horse race that's exciting. They'll be purely just watching it for the fact, oh, did my horse win or lose? But in saying that, our industry won't continue to go forward if we don't continue to promote it in a sense of how it makes money. And that's our biggest asset, is people wanting to bet on us. So it's a fine line. I think we need to continue to celebrate the participants. We've got some of the most amazing jockeys, horses and trainers all over the world. And when horses and jockeys come from overseas, we celebrate them. But we've got some of the best you can find worldwide in Australia. And people like James McDonald, Damien Oliver, James Cummings, Team Ma, Gay Waterhouse. These people, they're amazing for our sport, and they need to be there needs to be advertising about them. But also we can't forget the turnover and the punt and what puts the money into the industry as well. So it's a fine line. I can see what the question's about. I'm not allowed to bet because I'm a jockey. So it's probably, I see them ads and it just goes straight over my head because I can't do it anyway. But I can see, if I was allowed to bet and it was put in front of you all the time, you definitely would be looking forward to having a bet rather than just sitting back and thinking, geez, this is amazing that these 6 weight for age horses are all up against each other, which we've seen regularly over the Spring Carnival with Animo and Alligator Blood, and those horses regularly taking on each other. It was a great Spring Carnival, and yeah, I hope people continue to love the sport for the great horses and participants that's in it, and having a bet is come second, and it keeps funding us as well.
Definitely. I think it's such a balanced way to look at it. So I've just realized that my Zoom, because I haven't paid for the premium, I've got less than 1 minute here. So I'll give you a rapid fire last question. What is your favorite type of coffee?
Skin latte.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad my mate sent that one through. Clearly read your last name, but didn't read the spelling. But I'll quickly wrap this up. Thanks very much for taking time out of your Wednesday afternoon, Harry. It was great to talk to you. Very in-depth. You basically, we said, I think at the start, 20 to 25-minute conversation. It's nearly gone for 40. So I'll thank you very much for that, mate. And you're welcome back on any time.
Good on you. Happy days.
Easy, mate. And just before they cut us off as well. So brilliant timing. Thanks again. And all the listeners, I'll see you next time.